All right, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everyone, wherever you happen to be in the world today. We are so happy to have you with us today. This brand new boot camp that we are delivering called Don't Let Your MSP Become the Next Big Headline. Today is a joint venture between our head security nerd, Lewis Pope, and myself. My name is Stephanie Hammond. I'm the head nerd that's responsible for all things sales and marketing related. This is, Lewis and I delivered this boot camp in an abbreviated version. Last month, we were attending the Big Conference of Taylor Business Group. We had about, I think, a half an hour or 40 minutes, I think, Lewis, to talk on this subject, and it got really well received. So we've now done an expanded version that we are now delivering to everyone today. So we're very excited to be able to take this expanded version and deliver it. Just a couple of housekeeping reminders as we get going. Everyone is on mute. That's just to maintain call quality. If you're having any questions, anything, audio video issues or anything that comes up during the presentation today, get it into the question panel. And Lewis and I will do our best to answer as many questions as we can live during today's session. If for some reason we're not able to address your question live, we do commit to getting an answer back to you. Likely will be probably tomorrow because Lewis and I are delivering these boot camps all day today. This session is being recorded because this is the first time we're delivering it. It's brand new, so it is being recorded. So if you wanted to go back and listen to a couple of sections, or if you wanted to forward this along to your team and maybe have them review this as well, it is being recorded. If you need it right away, just put in the question panel, send me an email, send Lewis an email. We can get you the raw recording, because it will take probably maybe a couple of weeks for our marketing department to get it all cleaned up, and then it'll be uploaded into Enable You. All right. So there are a lot of webinars, a lot of training sessions out there that provide a lot of guidance and insight around how to build a cybersecurity business, especially with it being Cybersecurity Awareness Month. Lewis and I think we have about 30 hours of training just on the topic alone. But we thought it'd be interesting and just as beneficial to kind of build a new boot camp that really talks about what not to do when building a cybersecurity business. And for the boot camp today, we're going to review a couple of notable court cases that are going on at the moment, where MSPs, they're being blamed by the respective customers for failing to protect them from a cyber attack. And so we thought that these would be really good cases to review because we can use their misdirections as key lessons to learn from so that your MSP does not become the next big headline. So looking at case number one, currently there's an MSP in California. They are being sued for breach of contract by one of their legal clients for more than $1 million because their legal client is alleging that the MSP failed to protect them from a ransomware attack that ended up taking down their entire system, which then forced them to have to pay the attackers money in order to regain access to its own network and to its own data. The interesting that they are actually being sued for breach of contract, considering there was actually no written contract in place. It was basically a verbal contract that existed between the MSP and the legal firm. Details of the case that have come out so far on this, the incident first occurred back in February of 2023, but the suit wasn't filed until just this past March of 2024. The attack first started when the law firm alleged that it began to experience connectivity issues. And so they reached out to their MSP. The MSP did some work, reported back to the legal firm that the issue was resolved, and they closed the case. At the time that the case was closed, the legal client's claiming that the MSP didn't provide any further information, didn't provide any recommendations about its cybersecurity risks. Then 3 days later, the legal client was hit with a major outage of its systems, caused it to lose access to its servers and its data. Then the ransom demand was made by the attacker if they wanted to recover access to its data. But when the law firm then attempted to, try and recover data on its own, because obviously they didn't want to pay the ransom through their own backup system, that was when it was discovered that their data backup had been deleted. And the investigation has since revealed that access credentials may have been compromised outside of their systems, and they were used to delete the firm's backups and execute that ransomware attack.
And then the next case is one that happened in Maine. This didn't, the court case currently ongoing doesn't involve the MSP, but the MSP is likely to be dragged into it. This is an IT consulting firm that operates medical data analytics businesses, so big data around medical, and they're being sued in federal court by 9 of their clients, by their customers, for a data breach. Of course, the IT consultancy firm says it's not our fault. Since that IT consultancy firm, of course, is they're medical, they're handling sensitive PII. So big obligations there around proper and safe handling of this data. But so far, what's coming out with this current case is the MSP is not being named yet in the lawsuit. They're just going to have to worry about potentially being named because they have a large client. That large client has suffered from a cyber attack, and they are already kind of throwing them under the bus, so to speak. The IT consultancy firm is saying that it's not our fault, and they're kind of shifting blame. And of course, that means that the MSP themselves is going to get the brunt of that blame. And in the MSP's defense here, they were saying they were hired to provide technology consultation services, on-demand IT support, training, maintenance, and monitoring network services. This sounds very much like the generic boilerplate managed services agreements that we've seen for multiple years at this point. But they're claiming that, of course, well, we weren't retained or requested to provide cybersecurity and prevention coverage with what we were doing. So that leaves a little bit of a, well, did we deliver what we sold you, or did we sell you something we weren't doing?
Yeah, exactly. And then the final case, this one's a little bit of an older case from 2020, 2021. It was an MSP that was out of Ohio, and they were actually sued for professional negligence and malpractice by one of their manufacturing customers, because the manufacturing company ended up falling victim to a fake invoice phishing scam that ended up costing them $1.7 million in just 9 days. Based on reports that have come out on that case, it appeared that access was gained to the business owner's email account. And it was that business owner's email account that was then used to send phony invoices to the accounting team, requesting them to pay them to fake accounts. Unfortunately, the accounting team didn't really verify or check that these invoices actually came from the business owner. They never checked in with the business owner on that to see if they were actually legit. And the accounting department actually ended up wiring money to, I think, Hong Kong and Cambodia and paid them. So in the lawsuit that took place, the manufacturing client claimed that the MSP should have warned the client about the dangers of phishing. They claimed that the MSP mishandled the work ticket after the client reported the incident originally, and that the MSP was in charge of maintaining a secure environment, and it was to set security rules accordingly. The suit also alleged that the MSP failed to install antivirus on all of the customers' computers. And for 2 years, they were supposed to deliver their quarterly business reviews, but they never were delivered. And even though it was part of the managed services agreement that they had in place. I think the real clincher for this case was there was a written contract in place, unlike the California case. So there was a contract in place between the two, but it ended up actually being used against the MSP, ironically, when it was revealed how the MSP's own marketing ended up kind of making promises, and they were making promises and over commitments via their website, and it didn't actually align to what was actually written in the contract. So looking at these three cases, what can we take from these three cases that you can then incorporate when you're building your own cybersecurity business? And that's really what Lewis and I want to talk about in today's session. We want to offer some guidelines, some takeaways to help you build a better and safer cybersecurity practice. And these are all key takeaways, key lessons that you can pretty much start implementing later on today. Because what we're going to go through is not revolutionary in the least, but they're really good, I think, reminders. And because obviously that's why we're reviewing these three court cases, because these are all things that these three MSPs respectively did not do. And the first and foremost was always making sure that you have a contract, a signed written contract in place with every single customer partnership that you take on. Because as mentioned, in the California case, there was only an oral agreement and basically a handshake in place between the MSP and the legal firm client. And according to that oral agreement, it stated that the MSP, they were responsible for providing monitoring services, advice, installation, selling cloud backup, and picking and selling software and hardware for the legal firm. That's it. Again, boilerplate like what Lewis was talking about. There didn't appear to be any mention of the MSP actually being responsible for delivering any type of cybersecurity service as part of that oral agreement. And while I always thought it would be common sense, to ensure that all of your customers have a written signed contract in place with you, I still come across MSPs, and I just came across one last week, who proudly proclaim to me that they don't make their customers sign agreements because they want to be known as that MSP, that's accommodating, that's flexible, that we want to offer our customers convenience. But I think being noble like that is no longer a safe business practice for your MSP, and it's actually quite risky, because imagine the worst case scenario happening to you and you have to go to court to defend yourself against one of your customers, and you don't have anything to show the court to prove what you were and were not responsible for. So it really becomes a case of the finger pointing. So work with an attorney, get this formalized for you if you don't have proper contracts in place today. And I really encourage you to not repurpose anything that maybe you found on the internet or maybe that you received from a vendor or from another MSP. Use an attorney that's familiar with the MSP industry, your business, and the laws of the state to complete this for you. And then takeaway number two, make sure that, having contracts is one thing, but make sure that your written contracts clearly define your scope of work, so that you can set expectations and limit your exposure. Because in both the California case and the Maine case, details were pretty sparse in terms of what was included in the monthly fee. We kind of put them on the screen, very, very boilerplate. And there was nothing specifically mentioned of what was not included when it came to services being delivered by the different MSPs. And so as part of your agreement, it should contain a comprehensive managed services statement of work. And within the statement of work, it should outline the scope of services that will be provided and what each party's roles and responsibilities are going to be as it relates to that client engagement. And it's also very important to make sure that the document clearly states what's not included in the monthly fee and what your MSP is not going to be responsible for, along with any circumstances that might actually prevent you from not being able to deliver your services properly, just so that everyone is aware.
Yep. And there's something really important there, underlying not just the cases, but also what Steph just talked about in why you need written contracts and everything is clearly defined, is because unless you tell your clients otherwise, unless you disabuse them, they are going to make assumptions. Anybody who's been in the MSP channel for long enough knows that clients make all kinds of assumptions. And unless you take the time to sit down and have the conversations with them and clearly define the lines of responsibility and accountability in the relationship between you and your clients as an MSP, you're opening yourself up for all kinds of situations, from the mundane inconvenience of having to explain to a client why they should pay you for some work that you did, all the way up to them not having any disillusions of, oh, we've suffered an entire, ransomware event on our entire environment. Everything is down. I know and expect now as your client that I'm still going to have to pay you for the restoration work. I can't just simply say, well, I was paying you to take care of me, and then this bad thing happened, and I don't think I should have to pay for you to fix these things. And then there is item number 3, following a cybersecurity framework. Because again, we were working with a lot of boilerplate or no contract language. And this is something, again, I've seen a lot, is not often is there an actual cybersecurity framework being followed. And whenever you're designing your security programs, not only you internally, how you operate, but your programs themselves and your service delivery should follow parts of an established cybersecurity framework, whether you're being selective with what you're choosing, if you're following an entire, whole policy, whole of effort framework, whether it's CIS, NIST cybersecurity framework, high trust, ISO 27002 controls, or even if you're blending those together to make your own, whatever it is, there needs to be that established framework that you're aligning your services to, because this kind of solves the previous problem of expectations. What were you supposed to be doing for us? And if you have things aligned to a framework, it's easy to define that. It would take a couple hours, though, to go through all of the frameworks I mentioned. So just high level, the NIST cybersecurity framework is probably the most recognizable framework you're going to run across. You'll usually hear, someone will say, we follow NIST. My follow-up, though, is usually, okay, what part of NIST are you following? Because there is a lot. One of its primaries, if not most important, focuses and purposes is to help address and manage cybersecurity risks, and having those actually defined risk conversations, not just the, yes, I'm selling you a service, but actually these are the risks and how we are managing the risk and how we're addressing these risks. And also, oh, did you know and understand these risks? Those are all an important part of, sitting down and following a framework. It's not just putting tools in place. Sometimes it's a lot of conversations. And it can provide you with a structured approach instead of just trying to figure it out as you go. Technicians and engineers, MSP owners, usually talented bunch, love challenges. But just because you can sit there and tinker with a black box for 5 hours does not mean that's a good business decision. Running without your operations aligned to a framework is kind of another one of those situations. If you can do it, you can figure it out over time, but are you unnecessarily hurting yourself? There was an update to the cybersecurity framework, though, that we're now up to the NIST cybersecurity framework version 2, and that's expanded us out to 6 functions now from the original 5. The original 5 being identify, protect, detect, respond, and recover. MSPs have generally done a really good job around the protect and detect. Been getting better recently on the respond and the identify actions, and on the recovery actions, we're getting better on all of those. But now they've added in this new 6th one, govern. And I really like this new govern function because it's, I see a lot of value in it for MSPs. It gets right to the heart of one of the most important components of the relationship between an MSP and their clients, accountability. The govern function is designed to ensure that a business's cybersecurity practices are aligned with its business objectives, legal and regulatory requirements, and risk management strategies. It's going to be essential for establishing with your clients that you as the MSP, you may carry responsibility for implementing and managing these things, managing these IT resources. But the accountability of that decision-making process about what is going to be done to manage the risk of the client rest back with the client. It's their decision to make in the end, and you're there to facilitate it. Right. And then also, this is just a little bit of extra to go with that. Whenever you're building out these cybersecurity programs, whenever you're building out and designing these and you're implementing to a framework, you need staff, you need trained individuals to be able to do this kind of work. And you need to, stay up to date. What are the skills and qualifications that are currently needed to operate in these spaces? Do you have the bandwidth to wait for your team to train up to these skills? Or do you need to go to market immediately and hire individuals with the needed skills? What are those skills that you need? I like pointing out the NICE framework from NIST. A lot of NIST love today, but there's a reason. But the NICE framework is a really great resource for knowing what cybersecurity roles exist and what skills are needed by those cybersecurity professionals. Now, take a look at this at least once to do it. If nothing else, just a quick benchmark of the capabilities of your teams against what cyber defenders of today and tomorrow are expected to possess.
So building on what Lewis just talked about, how can we use NIST to really help build out a cybersecurity offering for your MSP? This is an ugly slide. I know it's ugly. I'm not really going through it in today's boot camp because I do cover it quite extensively in my boot camp series on building, pricing, selling cybersecurity webinars, and my winning strategies for selling MDR. And those boot camps are actually taking place over the next 3 weeks. We're into Cybersecurity Awareness Month. So if you haven't attended those boot camps where I kind of go into this slide in a little bit more detail and how it kind of all builds on each other, you can find recordings in Enable You, or I'll be bringing up the QR code at the end. So if you wanted to register for those boot camps, you'll be able to listen to them live this month. But really the goal of this slide is to outline what would typically be included in an advanced cybersecurity program and how it would align to a cybersecurity framework like NIST. And the idea here is that you can use this information to help you develop then your statements of work and help you define, what's in scope and what's out of scope when it comes to the services that you're going to be responsible for delivering. What I do want to focus on and take a moment to talk about is how to sell a program like this. Because I get that question quite a lot. And really the key to selling security is you want to sell it as a bundled set of services, because it's no longer a safe business practice to sell your security in an a la carte type of manner, like selling MDR, like managed detection and response on its own, or EDR on its own, endpoint detection and response, or backup on its own, or mail filtering on its own, and all of those kind of one-off type of scenarios. If you do sell security like that today, what you're doing is you're opening up your MSP to considerable risk. Plus, you're losing out on the opportunity to generate higher levels of monthly recurring revenue for your MSP. And the top MSPs, the ones that are consistently growing, they are structuring their security bundles in that bundled fashion because it provides two incredible benefits. The first one being it reinforces the product standardization piece because it keeps every client on the same program with the same feature sets and the same security stack. And that makes it a lot easier for you and your team to onboard, service, support your customers because the security tech stack is the same across the board for everyone. The second biggest benefit is, and this is the one that I like to talk to MSPs about, standardization is important, but from a sales perspective, it offers you the flexibility and the luxury to amend the product mix if you feel it's warranted. Because so many times I'll have MSPs tell me, Steph, I want to implement MDR, EDR, but I have to go back and talk to my customer first to see if they're going to buy this from me. And I'm telling you today, no, you don't. You know, as the MSP, you're the security expert. You're the one that understands completely, you know, what this whole changing threat landscape is like, you know, that we're kind of dealing with today. And so because of this, you don't need to go get your client's permission first. If you feel that changes to your security tech stack and everything that you're offering needs to be changed. I'm a big proponent of, you know, create your bundle, sell your bundle as that complete package, don't deviate from that. And then if you feel that changes are needed the following year, make those changes, implement the new security solution that you decided on into your tech stack, work at what that price increase is going to be, and then apply it across the board to all of your customers. So again, that standardization play, so that everyone remains on that standard program set. Because at the end of the day, remember who you're dealing with. You know, you're dealing with traditional managed services clients, non-technical business owners who don't know a lot about security, and they definitely don't know everything that's required to keep the bad guys at bay. But what they do care about, and basically what they're paying you for, is keeping their employees protected, keeping their data safe. And that is your primary objective for them. Because of that, I feel that your clients shouldn't have a say or really care, you know, what security tool sets you happen to be using to accomplish this for them. And then, you know, from a pure sales efficiency and growth mentality standpoint, you know, if you are going to spend your time kind of spinning up individual marketing and sales campaigns just to sell EDR, or just to sell backup, or just to sell mail filtering on its own, outside of a bundled approach, I think you're wasting the sales opportunity because, you know, I'll have, you know, MSPs come to me and say, oh, you know, does Market Builder have anything on EDR? Does Market Builder have anything on DNS filter? And my thinking is always, why not put all that time and energy into not just trying to sell EDR, not just trying to sell DNS filter, but why not put that time and energy into selling a bundled set of services, like what I discuss in my building security boot camps, like an advanced cybersecurity program that provides higher value, improves security coverage, improves cyber resiliency for when something does happen. Because cyber resiliency, cyber recovery, those are really the name of the game now. It's not, yes, we got to worry about prevention, but we really need to think about what's going to happen after the fact and how do we get our customers back up and running as quickly as possible. And so when you talk about the value behind that, that is really the difference between making this a technical tool sale, where if you're just trying to resell a tool, you're only going to be able to get minimum levels of profitability out of that, versus making this a value-based sale where you are focused on reducing risk, minimizing the breach impact, relieving pain. And when you can position a program like that, that's where you're able to charge higher prices for that. So my question always is back to the MSP when they're asking me about product-specific campaigns. If you're going to be speaking to prospects anyways, if you're going to be having your appointment setter line up appointments for you, don't waste that sales conversation. Instead of speaking to them about EDR or backup or DNS filter or password management or whatever individual tool you're trying to sell them, speak to them about your advanced security offering instead. Get them enrolled in that package program instead, and not just into that singular product. And then you get to reap the benefits of an increased deal size and higher levels of MRR for your MSP, while you're also working to mitigate your own security risk as an MSP.
And takeaway number 4 from these cases, ensuring, you need to have well-developed, practiced and rehearsed incident response playbooks and incident response plans in place that are well documented, so that you're ensuring that everybody knows how things work, where roles and responsibilities lie, so that your help desk knows exactly what to do whenever certain types of calls come in. Because one of the issues with the California case and the Ohio case centered around, the weak responses around the detect and respond functions of cybersecurity frameworks. Both of those lawsuits, the customers claimed that the MSP did not seem to respond or deal with these situations in an appropriate way. The California case, the client made the claim that after they first reported they were having connectivity issues, the MSP didn't take a lot of time investigating the issue. They did a little bit of work, closed the ticket without really communicating anything about the issue, what really happened, how they fixed it, and that the MSP didn't provide any recommendations that were cybersecurity related recommendations in response. And then on with the Ohio case, it was also with that manufacturing company. After they found that they had been paying those malicious hackers through fake invoices, they notified the MSP, but the MSP failed to take appropriate action. The ticket was only received a medium priority rating in the first place. So that might be a little bit of an issue showing due care, due diligence. And after the incident was first reported, the MSP insisted that there was not a breach and never took any additional actions. And this is one of those, the help desk person might be right that it's not a breach. It was a business email compromise that was nothing involving any of our stuff. You had a poor business workflow that had no safety checks and balances built into it. That's not our problem. While that might be one of those, it's technically true does not keep you out of trouble. Next slide.
Yeah, it's there.
Oh, okay, there we go. Yep. And then, what isn't contained within an incident plan? So a cybersecurity incident response plan is going to be an organization-wide document that details how the entire company is going to respond to a cybersecurity incident. So it's going to lay down the roles, responsibilities, the communication strategies, the PR policies, the phone number for the lawyers, the phone number for the external counsel or PR team. And it's going to be kind of general guidance, providing an overarching guidance of, how to prepare, identify, and respond to incidents. It'll also have a broader governance or compliance focus than a playbook will. And it describes the entire, a life cycle handling incident from the beginning of you find out to it all the way around to investigation, containment, remediation, and then, recovery and applying lessons learned. That continual process that, never ends. And then also really important in these is to have crisis communication. I mentioned PR and legal counsel. They absolutely positively should be a part of your incident response plan. And this shouldn't be, there should be 2 incident response plans in relation to in any relationship. There should be your incident response plan as the MSP for your business, but then for every single one of your clients, you'll probably, best practice would be also to have a tailored incident response plan for them. So they have their course of actions that they should be taking in response. Sometimes I've heard it referred to as the break glass in case of emergency instructions. That's what the incident response playbook incident response plan should be. And then for incident response playbooks, these are much more technical. It's a step-by-step instructions on how to respond to any type of specific cyber attack or scenario, ransomware, phishing attack, a data breach. They are focused on, again, those really specific scenarios, and they'll usually include flow charts and other things to help with the decision-making process for the technical team that's going to use these to actually, execute. As a help desk technician, you're going to want your team to be trained and prepared. So whenever they hear those key words like we have invoices that have been paid erroneously, or we think we've been scammed and we paid somebody, or we transferred or wired money, they should all be trained and cued into, oh, this needs to escalate. Let me go grab the business email compromise or the financial attack playbook. Also, they're going to often have your actionable steps. So if you can't sit down and ask your technicians or your engineers, what would you do in response to X scenario? And they can't immediately, like, just off the top of their head, and they probably can't. They can guess. They got a good idea of what they should do, but they're not going to have a fully formed process of A to Z, everything we need to do, and we'll get everything covered. You can't leave it in their heads and expect them to be able to always have access to it, even whenever somebody's off for the day. Also, make sure you're updating these frequently. Playbooks for, especially with ransomware. Ransomware tactics, techniques, and procedures get changed up all the time. Your documentation is going to have to as well. And then, well, working together. So I like saying plans let the business plan. Because if you don't have these things laid out, if this hasn't already been thought through, then whenever something does happen, you're not responding with urgency, you're responding with panic. And whenever your team responds with panic, but one, they're just not having a good time, and two, they're going to, more prone to making mistakes, making errors, and also their communication back and forth with the client's not going to be good, because again, they're going to be stressed, and they may say things that are going to make the situation worse and cause the clients to panic. Also, in that, it's letting the responders respond, so they know what they need to do. And if you have these, they should be practiced and rehearsed, so the team will be even more comfortable with them. And also, talent trees. So being able to verify quality and completeness between what the business team is doing versus what the engineering team is doing. So we're talking about this elsewhere, but if you go through the process of sitting down and creating a playbook and a plan, on the other side of that, you're going to come out with, oh, wow, these are misalignments. Here are these things where we might be saying we're doing one thing, but in practical actuality of how our team executes, we might actually be missing the mark.
And then looking at the fifth takeaway from these 3 court cases is always keep in mind that cybersecurity, it's a shared responsibility. Just because you're the MSP, it's not all on you to kind of keep your customers safe. So as you're building out your cybersecurity business, be sure that you're doing it in a way that kind of pushes part of the liability and part of the risk back onto the customer. And so what do I mean when I say that? So another question that I often get asked from MSPs, they're talking about their cybersecurity package, they're talking about what they recommend. Customers are coming back to them and saying, yeah, you're a little bit too expensive, so I don't want to pay for it. I don't want to be enrolled. So MSPs are coming to me and asking, should I just get them to sign a limited liability waiver or some sort of release of liability or hold harmless letter in order to protect my MSP? And I think actually Enable on LinkedIn released a video where I'm talking about this. And so if you've seen that already this morning, it was supposed to come out afterwards, but it came out a little bit early. But if you saw that, you would have seen that my short answer was no, right? I do not agree with getting customers to sign any form of limited liability or any form of a release of liability waiver with your customers. And this was actually reinforced. Lewis and I were at the Business of Security event in Austin last week, and there were several MSPs that were up on the stage kind of talking about how they built their own cybersecurity practice. And this topic came up, and the MSPs that were presenting, they talked about that they do not agree with getting their customers to sign any form of limited liability waiver either. So it was nice that I was in alignment with what they were talking about. But I say this because even if you got your customer to sign a waiver, your MSP could still be subject to reputational damage. You still could be making headlines regardless and become known as that MSP that allowed their customers to fall victim to a cyber attack. And my feeling on this is, even if you got them to sign that waiver, in the heat of the moment when they do get breached, that's when your customer may conveniently forget that they ever signed something like this with you. Because when they do get breached, and they will, because if they don't have all of your recommended security services in place, there's going to be holes in their cybersecurity protection levels. And when you allow holes in their protection levels, you've just made it a whole lot easier for the bad guys to get in. So your customers, if they deviate, they are going to get breached. And as a result, they're probably going to be angry, and they're going to be looking to blame you anyways. They could potentially turn on you and say, you know what, like, why didn't you insist that we be enrolled in your security program? Why didn't you mandate this for us? You're the experts, we're not. You know more about this than we do. And Charles Weaver, who I had the great pleasure of meeting last week, he's the founder of MSP Alliance. He's done a couple of different podcasts with Enable over the last couple of months. And in one of the podcasts that he did, he was very adamant about, MSPs can no longer continue to absolve their customers from their poor decisions. So if a customer has told you that your services are too expensive and they won't sign, then instead of having them sign a limited liability or a release of liability or whatever you want to call it, I would rather see an MSP walk away from the deal, because that's the only real way where you can truly protect your MSP from both liability and reputational damage. I would respond back to the customer and say, look, I respect your concerns. Why don't I refer you to another MSP then? One that doesn't enforce the same set of cybersecurity standards like I do, because this is the program that I recommend to all of my customers who are in the same industry or the same business as yours. Ultimately, my job is to protect you, your business, your livelihood, the livelihood of your employees. And if you're not going to allow me to do my job correctly, then unfortunately, I don't think we're a good fit, and I don't think I can be your MSP. But I would happily refer you to someone else. And a lot of times, by telling them that you would happily refer them to someone else, you're standing your ground and you're conveying how seriously your MSP takes its cybersecurity responsibilities with respect to your customers. But I feel that by capitulating and kind of having your customer sign a waiver, you're sending mixed messages, because on one hand, you're telling them that, security is important, they need to be enrolled in your advanced cybersecurity program. Well, on the other hand, you're telling them, no worries if you don't really agree with me, just sign this waiver and we'll just continue to support you anyways. So I would rather see MSPs kind of normalize the disqualification of prospects who don't take their cybersecurity responsibilities seriously, and have them walk away from those customers that are going to subject their MSP to unnecessary risk and liability. And this is where we can really harp on or really leverage kind of the NIST 2.0 framework, where it has that govern function in that. You're pushing it back onto the business owner that this isn't a technical issue that we're trying to address. This is a business issue that we need to address. And if they're not going to take their responsibilities seriously from a business perspective, then I really do encourage MSPs to just walk away, because churn in this case is not a bad word when we're focused on building a better book of business for our MSP, because it's through building this better book of business that ultimately is going to bring your MSP higher business valuations, and it is going to make your MSP better off in the long run.
And that govern function that Steph just mentioned and we went over earlier, along with, why do you even get into that conversation in the first place with your clients whenever they make those, I don't want to consume this service, or I don't think I need this, it's too expensive. It's really at the root of the relationship between you and your clients. It's about risk and accountability. And this govern function really helps you lay down where the fact that the accountability in the end is always going to go back to the client for what decisions they make, but that's not how they view the relationship. Again, back to assumptions, you have to disabuse your clients of them. Your clients assume I have given you money, therefore this is all your headache. But this govern function, kind of start treating it as gospel, because it really gives you, I don't want to say the high horse beyond, but it gives you a platform of credibility to stand on and say, look, you're responsible in the end. You are accountable in the end for all of these decisions. So just as you, my client, are accountable, I am also accountable. And the govern function for me dictates that I can't involve myself with you according to this because you're not willing to accept and have the accountability that's required for this type of risk sharing relationship.
Exactly.
And now on to takeaway number 6. Make sure your clients have their own cyber insurance policies. And this is another good way of helping encourage customers to be accountable for their own risk and assure that your customers have, again, they are making the wrong assumptions. They need to have their own cybersecurity insurance plans in place. Some MSPs are even starting to make it a contractual requirement that customers carry their own cyber liability insurance coverage. And they are making this move to help mitigate as much of their risk exposure as they can, because your clients represent a risk exposure to you and you represent a risk exposure to them. And there's always things that can happen that are, the edge cases, the things that are out of your control. And that's where you really want to have the appropriate insurance coverage available for you and for your client. And MSPs are, the intent around cybersecurity has always been it was a worst case scenario. When things happen, it's there and we can use it. But it's like anything else when it comes to cybersecurity. It's something that actually needs to be practiced. It needs to be something that is renewed. Something that everybody needs to understand their roles and responsibilities concerning. Because, MSPs and their customers, you can't assume and carry all of the liability and all of the cyber risk for your customers. That's kind of what they're expecting. They're like, hey, I've paid you money, therefore this is all now your headache and responsibility. But in reality, you can't act as your client's insurance policy. So that mandate for customers to carry their own cyber insurance now is really a pushing back of that accountability and responsibility that has been traditionally, in a lot of situations, been placed on the MSP from the point of view of the client. So you may want to consider making this movement as well. Start insisting that your clients have their own cyber liability insurance. If they don't have one in place, bring it up as part of other conversations you're having around this whole cybersecurity movement of, I need you to improve. We need to move you forward, and this is a part of moving you forward. And of course, if you do put this in place, then in order to qualify for policies, you're going to have certain things in place. You're going to have, most likely, the client's going to need to be enrolled in whatever is a part of your advanced security packages that you're offering. So as the requirements are listed on the cyber liability insurance application form, that helps and assists you in the sales process.
Absolutely.
And of course, one of my things I always harp on is everyone needs coverage. You can't piggyback off of someone else's insurance. There is if you are not familiar with the principles around first-party coverage and third-party coverage, or E&O, or professional liability insurance, I highly recommend finding my cyber liability insurance boot camps I have. But as an MSP, your first and third party cyber liability coverage is for you. It covers you and what happens to you. It does not cover what happens to your clients. It doesn't provide for their losses and helping them become whole after a incident. If you have your insurance and your client doesn't, and this is what's happened in some of those court cases from earlier, the client has they're in a situation of damage has been done, their business needs to be made whole, but they don't have any appropriate insurance that's going to make that happen for them. They're going to look for other alternatives in order to maintain their solvency, and that may include pursuing you in civil courts or otherwise to make themselves whole. And that's why you'll need your third-party cyber liability insurance for that. And the first-party cyber liability insurance, just really quickly, that is for you. That is for what happens to you as the covered business, providing for incident response, for recovering from ransomware attack, for notifying your individuals whose PII information you handle that might have been compromised, providing for ongoing credit monitoring services. That's what the first party is there for. The third party is there for whenever somebody has something happens and they decide, well, I need to make myself whole and I'm going to sue you to make myself whole. That's when you need that third party insurance. So, and also make sure your MSP has sufficient insurance in place. So just as important as it is for your clients to have their own insurance policies, because whenever things happen to them, they're going to be filing claims against their insurance, not yours. You need to have the right amount of insurance coverage for yourself as an MSP. And you also need to make sure you have the policies, procedures in place to make sure that you're adhering to whatever you attested to whenever you applied for that insurance. A common issue that comes up whenever there are issues around insurance is typically because, well, somebody said something and then they did something else. For a previous court case, it's not one of the ones we had listed, but there was a court case where somebody attested we have MFA enabled, and then something happened, the investigation occurred, and it was like, oh, hey, look, you did not have MFA enabled on the privileged accounts that were used to compromise the environment and spread ransomware. No, we're not going to pay out this claim because we have a clear, demonstrable case of negligence. And from the Ohio case, whenever you start getting into exclusions, where you've got a situation where things aren't going to pay under one situation versus the other, it just makes it so much more muddled and so much more of a potential situation you could find yourself in, where someone starts saying, well, hey, you know what you told me and what you sold me and what you told me you were going to do versus what you actually delivered. Now, that's whenever you get into, are we getting into deceptive practices, negligence? This is where you're wanting to have your errors and omissions insurance or your own professional insurance so that you can have protection for yourself for when and if somebody within your organization honestly does something incorrectly, does something wrong. You need to be covered for those scenarios. And especially nowadays with what the knock-on repercussions can be for these, you do not want to have a situation where a client can clearly demonstrate you fell short and you not have anything to protect yourself, because that can absolutely be an insolvency moment. And into third-party cyber liability insurance really quickly. Again, this is for you to be insured against claims made by that third party. It's for dealing with the financial cost of whatever arises. And well, what could arise, you don't know. And that's kind of the point of the insurance, to account for those situations that you can't predict, that you can't protect against, and you just have to have that final line of, well, when and if it happens, we need to make sure that financially we're protected and we can recover from it. So your first and third party cyber liability covers, again, only the covered entity. Can't hammer that home enough. Your insurance that you get does not protect your client. The insurance that your client has does not convey any benefit to you. The only thing, the only benefit in the relationship there is you're kind of now have that established understanding of, yes, we will carry our insurance. Yes, you must carry your insurance. And whenever anything happens, that's where the claims go, and we let the lawyers fight it out.
All right, takeaway number 8 from these court cases. It's all about being consistent in your service delivery and ensuring that you are delivering on the services that you've committed to and have documented within the scope of work and within your written agreement. You don't want to give your insurance company, as Lewis has just said, any reason to avoid paying out when you're going to need them most, because they found you, your MSP, to be that negligent party. Because when we do look at that Ohio case, even the best errors in emission insurance couldn't have protected that MSP from liability, because in that case, they were found to be negligent because it was discovered that some of the machines, they were missing antivirus on them, even though their service order stated that their MSP would provide virus and malware protection. That's a really big oversight that really never should have been allowed to happen. And also in the Ohio case, the MSP promised to have sit-down meetings with their customers to conduct quarterly business reviews, but they didn't deliver on those either. 2 years leading up to the breach, the MSP never connected or sat down with the manufacturing client to have their strategic business review. So in these couple of instances alone, the MSP was found to have failed to live up to the quality standards that are expected of an MSP, and it went against what was actually outlined in a lot of E&O insurance policies. So kind of the moral of the story here is don't be complacent, rather, as you're delivering your own cybersecurity programs. You want to be continually auditing your service delivery process, auditing your team. What are they doing to ensure that they are delivering on what you are promising? So whatever's written in your SOWs, your service contracts, your marketing messaging, make sure that that is actually being delivered to your customers on a regular and consistent basis. Because if you're not, even if your E&O insurance policy, it won't be able to protect you because that could lead to what amounts to false and deceptive advertising. So it's kind of this thing that you can't insure yourself out of subpar service delivery. And so this is what takeaway number 8 is all about. If you're finding that things are slipping, if services are being missed, you're missing security software on different machines, your preventative maintenance activities aren't really being done on a consistent basis or not being done at all. If you're not up to date on your patching, if critical patches haven't been applied, if backups haven't been audited, and if failed backups haven't been rectified, these are all things that you want to get sorted as soon as possible. And so if you don't have an auditing process in place today, work to put one in place to ensure that things like this don't get missed in the future. And then along the same lines as the previous point, takeaway number 9 is don't let your marketing collateral overstate the level of services that you are providing, and don't make claims or promises that your MSP can't deliver on. Because again, that's kind of what tripped up the Ohio-based MSP that ended up getting sued by their manufacturing client. It was verbiage, when you looked at the legal document, it was verbiage from their own website that ended up being used against them in the lawsuit that was filed against them. The MSP basically sold the manufacturing client on the fact that it would be the one-stop shop for all their IT needs, and that there would be no need for any other service providers for any other purpose. Let your staff focus on innovation and business-oriented tasks. And so this MSP, they got in trouble for making promises to their customers that they didn't deliver on, partly because they didn't do a good enough job auditing their internal service delivery processes. So I think, the marketing is great. Big fan of marketing, being the head sales and marketing nerd, but you do want to make sure that you are avoiding these types of over embellishments, these type of hyperboles when it comes to your cybersecurity marketing and sales collateral. Just keep it factual, write it in a way that the marketing language that you use does align to and reflects what is actually documented in your contracts and in your statements of work. And takeaway number 10, though it probably maybe should be number 1, because I think it's the biggest takeaway from them all, is make sure you are delivering those quarterly business reviews. Quarterly business reviews, I prefer to call them executive business reviews, so QBRs, EBRs, TBRs, whatever word you want to use for them. They really are the cornerstone of any good cybersecurity program. They're needed to keep the lines of communication open, and they're needed to ensure that both parties are on the same page in terms of expectations and accountability. Going back to what Lewis was saying, there's no room for assumptions, right? So we need these QBRs to make sure we're all on the same page. Because if you aren't regularly speaking with your clients via the QBR process, then as Lewis has mentioned, they could be feeling that just by virtue of them paying you a fee every month, that your MSP is doing everything possible to protect their network from a cyber attack, and that they are completely safe. But if you know that that's not the case, if you know that they do have gaps in their cybersecurity protection coverage, that perception needs to be corrected. And it needs to be corrected very, very quickly, because in all 3 cases, these critical client engagement conversations, they were not happening. The clients assumed that they were being properly protected by their respective MSP when they really weren't. In the California case, in the Maine case, in the MSP's mind, the clients didn't sign up for anything from a cybersecurity perspective, nor did the customers agree to pay for any sort of cybersecurity protection coverage. So because the clients weren't paying, the MSPs didn't think they were responsible for it, but because the clients were paying something, they actually weren't covered like they thought they were, right? So the sad, unfortunate truth is, all 3 of these court cases could have been completely avoided if these MSPs had been having those regular conversations, those QBRs with their customers. Because if these MSPs had been speaking to their customers on a regular basis, the risk conversations would have been happening. The security deficiencies, the holes in their organization's cybersecurity protection coverage would have been uncovered, and the assumptions would have been dealt with. And this would have been done before they translated into any real problems that resulted in severe financial and reputational damages for both the client and the MSP. So takeaway number 10, if you're not having regular interaction with your customers, if you're not talking to them about their security and risk exposure, please, 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 please make it a point to reach out to your customers and get those meetings set up. And don't pre-object, because I've had MSPs come back to me and say, well, some of my customers are never going to buy into my security services, so I'm not going to bother reaching out to them. Don't pre-object like that. Connect with all of your customers, because, as we've been saying, and as Lewis has said, there's no room for assumptions, when it comes to something as critical and as serious as an organization's cybersecurity protection coverage. All right, so just kind of want to reflect back on your own situation, look at your own MSP practice, what you may or may not be doing from a cybersecurity standpoint, thinking critically, and honestly, could any of these situations easily happen to you? Do you recognize gaps in your own MSP operations that could potentially open you up to some kind of legal liability, negligence, reputational damage, should one of your own clients experience a breach and want to blame you? So, really, we wanted to have this boot camp today because we don't want any of you to become that next big headline. You know, don't put your MSP, your employees, and the livelihood at risk, because nothing that we spoke about today, and I kind of said that at the beginning of the boot camp, nothing here is revolutionary, right? They're just all simple fundamentals that were in full control of the MSP, but in the instance of these 3 court cases, they were disregarded. So I think in light of these court cases and what's happening to these MSPs' reputation, we didn't think reminders hurt. And so that was really the goal of today's boot camp.
And an important takeaway here, a little bit less from the business side and more over to the technical processes, procedures, and operations side. You can't operate like yesterday's MSP and expect to contend with today's modern risks. This is more than just simply you're adding more tools to your portfolio. Addressing this may mean you have to make significant changes to how you operate internally, how your teams are structured, the roles and responsibilities that different team members have. So, like all of our other boot camps that we have around this, there's so much. It is a big journey. It is not a small thing. It is a big thing that can become a huge thing. But the good thing is that you're already here today. You're sitting here like, well, what do I need to be aware of? What are the shortfalls? And I think we set you up today with some very good ones to avoid.
Exactly. And if you are looking for more information, especially around, how do you build a profitable, safe cybersecurity practice, we've just released our new selling security playbook called Defend and Prosper, maximizing the cybersecurity opportunity. There's a QR code there for you to download a copy of it. If anyone is having issues downloading a copy of the Selling Security Playbook, just throw it into the question panel, reach out to Lewis and I, and we can be sure to get a copy over to you. All right, so we're hoping that you found today's boot camp valuable. Again, a little bit of a different take on the boot camps that we normally deliver, just because of these court cases that are happening and how easily avoided these court cases. They never really should have happened. And so we hope that there was some nuggets that you can take out of this. Again, this was the very first time that we delivered this boot camp, so feedback is always very valuable to us. So if there's any other comments or improvements or any feedback that you like to give, we absolutely welcome it. Just throw it into the question panel or send us an email. So thank you, everyone, for those that voted. Absolutely appreciate it. And just an outline of my upcoming boot camps. I guess I should have put yours in here too, Lewis. Maybe we'll get that fixed up for this afternoon's session. But just for those building, selling, pricing, security boot camps that I was alluding to earlier, they are coming up once a week. I'm going to be delivering a boot camp on that. You can use the QR code to register for those. And I know, Lewis, I feel all the boot camps this month are you and I. So what are the ones that you are delivering as well this month?
So there are the cybersecurity, cyber insurance boot camps. There's also NIS2 boot camps for those who are joining us from the EU. I'll be doing a boot camp at the end of the month for that. And then there's also a SOC, SIM, SOAR, and Compliance in a Day boot camp that's also available. So a lot of, being again Cybersecurity Awareness Month, a lot of good content there for you to catch up on and accelerate what you're doing. And the goal with a lot of those are simply a lot of foundational knowledge to save you from having to learn it by, the old-fashioned, learning fire is bad by touching a hot pan. We're trying to get you past that.
Absolutely. Perfect. All right. Well, thank you, everyone. Absolutely appreciated your time today. Any questions, any feedback, anything that you want to discuss as a result of today's boot camp, my contact information there. Lewis is on there. We're both on LinkedIn as well, so never hesitate to reach out. All right, take care. Have a good rest of the week. Bye.